From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Dan Harary, that's me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. I am Dan Harary, broadcasting live in Technicolor from my beautiful office in downtown Beverly Hills. I've been a Hollywood publicist a very long time. I'm an author of a few books. Behind me, After They Came, is my Benevolent Aliens book. Not many people write about benevolent aliens. And my Flirty with Fame Hollywood book is my Hollywood career, and lots of fun photos of me with famous people, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, just a quick plug. If you're into the UFO, ET phenomenon, please, if you're interested, buy your ticket soon for Contact in the Desert. The tickets are going fast. It's going to be a remarkable 10-year anniversary event. It's in Indian Wells at a beautiful, beautiful resort called the Renaissance Resort. And my next guest will be a featured speaker there. I will be a featured speaker there, as will be all of your favorites, Richard Dolan and Nick Pope and Steve Bassett and Carolyn Corey and Jason Martell and Avi Loeb and Whitley Strieber and just Travis Walton's going to be there. It's going to be remarkable. So contactinthedesert.com, contactinthedesert.com. Buy your tickets. Don't miss out. I'll see you there. Please look for me. And my next guest will be there as well. And speaking of my next guest, we have a very special show tonight. I don't want to babble up front too much. So here we go. Actor, producer, director, and author Thomas Jane is a man of many talents. A triple Golden Globe Award nominee for the comedy series Hung, Thomas has starred in such classic films as The Thin Red Line, Deep Blue Sea, Boogie Nights, The Punisher, Magnolia, The Vanished, The Sweetest Thing, and The Mist. He won critical acclaim for his role as New York Yankees baseball legend Mickey Mantle in HBO's wonderful movie, one of my favorites, HBO's movie called 61 with a little asterisk. It was directed by Billy Crystal. And Thomas was recently seen on TV in the Alcon sci-fi series The Expanse. Thomas's production company, Renegade Entertainment, which launched in 2019, recently wrapped production on the second season of their scripted series Tropo, and Thomas stars in that series for Amazon, IMDb TV, and AGC Studios. During the past 4 years, Renegade Entertainment has completed production on Murder at Yellowstone City, The Last Son, and the noir thriller Dig. In 2020, Thomas starred in the films Run, Hide, Fight, which premiered at the Venice Film Festival, A24's Hot Summer Nights opposite Timothée Chalamet, and 20th Century Fox's The Predator, directed by Shane Black. Now, here's something you don't know about Thomas Jane. Thomas Jane is also an author, and he's currently completing his nonfiction book, A Human's Guide to Advanced Visiting Aliens. So clearly we have a lot to talk to Thomas about. Thomas hopes that his new book will become indispensable for ufologists, futurists, humanists, and anyone else with a keen interest in the human animal. In the book, Thomas poses the questions of where we may or may not be destined to go as individuals, as a society, and as a species when mankind moves further and further into the future. So now, without any further ado, let's bring in the one and only Mr. Thomas Jane. And there he is.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, man. How are you?
This is a good thing to be doing at 10 o'clock on a Thursday. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Thank you very much for doing this for me, really, Thomas. I appreciate it, man.
I like your laid back style, you know? This reminds me of long drives and you got the AM radio on and you're listening to two guys chat about stuff. You're going, what the hell are they talking
about? Well, the truth is I didn't get my nap today. I had a very big client project today, and every day I take a nap. I do, 3:30 to 5.
Oh, man, it's indispensable.
And I didn't get my nap today, Thomas. So if I like to start like this, you'll just prod me. All right. So, Race, can we put up slide one?
Maybe she.
There he is. Okay. Oh, So, Thomas, you and I met at the launch of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. That was back in November 2023. That was quite a while ago. It feels like 2 days ago, but it was quite a few months ago. We did that at Musso and Frank's. That's you and me. That's when we met, and that's when we launched our little group. And raise slide number 2. There you are with. Do you want to name these people, or would you like me to?
There's Hynek, my buddy Paul.
Paul Hynek's on the right.
I can't make out the other guys. You have to.
Okay, so on the right of the frame is Paul Hynek, J. Allen Hynek's son. Far left is Craig Campobasso. He's a
great guy.
Yeah,
great book. yeah. Got that Guide to Extraterrestrials. Really good book.
Yeah. He's a very, very good author. He's an excellent author. Behind him is Sean West.
Sean's great.
Yeah, I think he worked with him, Thomas. Sean is the agent to the UFO stars. He's the agent for Richard Dolan and Nick Pope, among others. And in the back is Ron James, filmmaker. He's a client of mine for PR. And Ron is going to be releasing his sequel to Accidental Truth, a UFO documentary, very, very soon. So, yeah, that was a fun day, man. And it was really cool that you were there.
It's a good crowd, and it's a good project. You know, I like the idea of trying to bring in a little bit of reality to the Hollywood game. You know, 95% of the alien stuff is all about alien invasions. So it's nice to try to bend the wheel a little bit.
Absolutely. All right, Race, you can kill that one, please. Okay, so Thomas, I have a couple quick questions. Now, This is interesting. You were a member of a UFO group with Steve Bassett like 10 years ago or something in Marina Del Rey.
That's how we met.
So I would ask you some questions. Did that UFO group have a name? And I heard, do you remember what it was called?
Paradigm. Was it called the Paradigm Research Group?
That's Stephen's organization.
Did he call it? Yeah, but I think that the group was called something like that as well. But my memory is not the best when it comes to names.
Okay. And do you remember some of the other people that were there, members, or where you met?
We met at a little sound stage. It was like a little studio in the middle of Marina Del Rey. It was always at night, you know, so you're always walking down back alleys to get into this studio. It was a big, wide open space, like most studios are. And the light was in the middle, so it was kind of dark around the edges, you know. And my first time I went there, I kind of hung out in the shadows and just watched everybody. There were some television producers were there, some writers, and some MUFON guys, just guys who were interested in the subject, you know. And I was new. I was very new to the game when this thing came out. So I was excited to go down there and meet a few people. And Steve Bassett being one of them. We hit it off, and we've stayed in touch ever since.
Right. That's right there. I mean, did Stephen hold court? Was he?
Oh, yeah.
He was on the cutting edge, and he's been on the cutting edge for 30 years.
At that time, the sort of mock congressional hearings were happening around that time. So there was a lot of news similar to what's going on today a little bit, but not quite as big because it wasn't making, you know, the New York Times.
Right.
But it was an interesting time, you know. There was always sort of a feeling of that something good was going to happen. The atmosphere was kind of baited. We were waiting with bated breath for something that, of course, never happened.
Not yet. Hopefully soon. Stephen tells a story that one day Paul Hynek came to your meeting, and he happened to mention his last name, and everybody, Hynek, what do you remember about that night, if anything?
That's right. Yeah, he said, you know, people when you go around and introduce themselves, and this one guy says, "Yeah, my name's Paul Hynek," and Bassett goes, "Wait a second. Did you say Hynek? Are you talking about J. Allen Hynek?"
Right.
Yeah, that's my dad. And he goes, "Jesus, come here."
That's a true story then, right? That really happened.
Absolutely true story.
Yeah,
I was there for that. I was introduced to Paul at that time, but then a producer buddy of mine took me down to one of the special effects studios, and that's where I actually met Paul. We met talking about special effects on movies.
Right.
So that's where we were, sort of really introduced, and got to hanging out a little bit. Paul's fantastic guy, bright, smart as a whip. I
Great.
really
Yeah,
like what he's doing. He'll be there at the.
Oh yeah, sure. He's a good friend of mine. He's on the board of HDA, as are you. We did an event a few weeks ago with him and his brother. Have you ever met his brother Joel?
I have, yeah. In fact, me and Paul just I flew down to Texas with my daughter Harlow to see the eclipse.
Oh, okay.
So we hooked up with Paul and Joel and a big group of his family and friends.
Oh, that's
and
great.
Of course, when we got there, it was cloudy.
Right. I heard about that. Yeah.
Oh my God. I just spent so much money on the damn tickets to take me and my kid down here to watch the clouds. This is, but I was with the right group. They had 6 different apps open, weather apps, and they were triangulating the clouds and the weather and the pattern. And so we all hopped in like a caravan of 4 cars and we drove 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Out into the middle of nowhere. We ended up in this little airfield that had only little planes, and there were wildflowers in the field. And we set up, and we're like, all right, it was still cloudy. We're like, all right, well, this is as good a place as any. The clouds would break every now and then, and you'd see the eclipse start, but we had sandwiches, and we had chairs, and we were hanging out. And about 2 minutes before the eclipse came on for real, the clouds parted, the blue sky came out, the moon went over the sun. We saw the whole totality. The world got dark, the eeriest light. I've never seen a totality like that before. Let me tell you, it's a hell of a lot different than a partial eclipse. The full deal. The world turns a tone. Like the insects got quiet. The whole world took on this magical kind of surrealistic tone for a good 5 minutes. And then when it was really dark, the crickets started going, the airport lights came on. I mean, it was magical, right in the middle of the day. And then that ended, and the sun started peeking out the other side of the moon. And then the clouds came over.
And that was it. So you got it exactly.
And it couldn't have been better because of the drama, the drama of whether or not we were going to actually get to see this damn thing. And it turned out I was with the right group of guys. So, it was magical. I don't think it'll ever be that magical again. There's another one in 27. I plan on going. It's in Cairo.
Oh, okay. Have you been there before?
I've never been. So that's going to be my excuse to go see the pyramids and go see Cairo and hopefully hook up with some people in the field. I'm sure it's going to be a hell of an event. It's going to be 6.5 minutes of totality. Wow. Which is really long and really unusual. So 27 in Cairo, if anybody wants to meet me there.
Are you going to take Harlow with you?
Absolutely.
Will you take me with you, Thomas? I'll go.
She fell in love with it. Yeah, whoever can fit into my suitcase, you can come.
I will shove myself into your suitcase, man. I would absolutely. I want to see the pyramids someday.
Me too.
How did you get interested in the UFO ET phenomenon, and have you had any personal sightings or personal experiences in that?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's a question that deserves a longer answer.
It sounds like a yes. It sounds like a yes, Thomas.
It's an absolute yeah. But how? As far as I have, yes. The answer is yes. And I had a couple of experiences that we can talk about. But as for how I got into it, I grew up in Maryland. I was an Army brat. My mom and my dad were in the Army. I was born at Fort Meade near Maryland. Both parents in Vietnam. I got out of there when I was 16, 15 and a half, the first time. As soon as I got my learner's permit, I was out, I was looking for adventure. I couldn't really be held down. I was crushed by the school system that I learned early on was this, it was a system designed to crush any kind of free-spirited inquiry, any sort of imagination. And somehow I keyed into that, and I was like, this is bad, My parents moved around a lot when I was a kid.
Okay.
So I had this kind of outsider sort of thing. We were moved. I didn't go to kindergarten. So by the time everybody was in first grade, it was like my first day of school ever. I never went to nursery school or kindergarten. I didn't have any friends. We lived out in the country. My dog was my best friend. His name was Buck. Best friend I ever had, and a great way to grow up out in the country, me and a dog running around in the fields, but it didn't, socialize me very well.
Okay.
So, I got into gifted and talented classes as a kid. Yes, they thought I was bright. I remember the first thing I did, like they'd make you do these sort of presentation essay type things. I did it on pulsars and quasars.
And how old are you? Like 12,
I was
13?
Probably 7.
7? You're doing pulsar? I don't even know what a pulsar is now.
And they were new at the time. They were new, like they'd just been discovered. So I thought that was really cool. And it gave me, an interest in the early interest in the universe. So I started school late. I moved around a lot. I read a lot of books. I watched a lot of movies. I read a lot of comic books. I was into art class. And I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I also played football. So I wasn't a jock. I wasn't an art nerd. I kind of seemed to always fall between the cracks.
Okay.
And the schemes of society, right? And this is kind of where I'm going with this. I was a punk rocker in suburban America. As we were talking earlier, it was very much the DIY, ethic was I really responded to. I used to listen. Grew up around DC, so I listened to Minor Threat, The Rites of Spring, which merged into Fugazi, anything on the Discord label, And as far as movies, it was John Waters,
Oh yeah, you like him? Pink Flamingos, yeah.
Hairspray, Polyester, David Lynch's Eraserhead. I mean, these were the movies of my youth, and anything that Clint Eastwood did.
Wow. So your parents must have looked at you like, where the hell did you come from, right?
So, yeah. And then I dropped out. I finally, dropped out of high school. I go, I just can't take this anymore. At 15 and a half, I tried taking off for the first time. I got caught and brought back. And my folks were like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I was like, can't do that anymore. I can't do that. I can't go in there and be brainwashed anymore. I didn't use those words, but I was just like, I can't do that. So my mom found me an acting class because I used to build sets in art school. You would build the sets and you would paint the sets and all that. And that got me into acting. That I wound up in India doing Bollywood films at 16.
Wow.
They came down to my acting class. They were looking for, a white guy to be in this Romeo and Juliet Bollywood thing. So I did that. I came back, packed up all my stuff, went to San Francisco. I went to acting school there. I realized that there wasn't any, Hollywood was not in San Francisco. That's how little I knew of how the world worked. So I went down to LA. I didn't have any money. I lived in my car. I mean, I was just flying by the seat of my pants, I don't even know if I'd read Jack Kerouac's On the Road yet, but somewhere around in there, Henry Miller, like those were my, Down and Out in Paris by, was it Orwell?
Thomas, so what year are you in LA living in your car? About
80s.
What year?
We're talking about
early 80s,
mid 80s. Yeah.
Mid 80s.
Well, I was supposed to I would have been the class of 87. So I dropped out a couple of years before that. That was when I was 15. So yeah, we're talking mid 80s, 84, 85, 86.
You know who else lived in his car in the late 70s, early 80s? Lived in his car, Jay Leno.
Oh, no shit.
He lived in his car behind the Comedy Store. I was his publicist for 2 years in the 80s.
Wow.
When he got the Tonight Show. But
right.
People like you and Jay Leno, man. I knew Bruce Springsteen before he was famous, and he used to sleep on the beach and hitchhike around. Yeah. You guys that have made it in life, you've been very persistent and very consistent. You sort of have a dream and you make it happen. It's very cool.
Well, and you meet a lot of really interesting people when you're living on the street,
I would think so. Yeah.
A lot of fringe characters who live on the edge of society.
And that brings us to your ET abduction, I would imagine. Yeah, no, I'm old. So tell us about your ET UFO, because I know you're hesitating for some reason.
Well, I'm trying to paint a picture of sort of like what kind of person gets into this stuff, you know? And,
okay.
And Stephen Hawking had a quote that I will never forget. He said, "If UFOs are real, why do they always appear to freaks and weirdos?" Right? Well, you know, it's these folks that live sort of on the edges that have either dropped out or fallen through the cracks, you know, and a lot of them are very intelligent. You know, you find the ratio of smart people to dumb people. There's a lot more, you know, than in general society. There's people who've kind of, you know, decided or been kicked out, either forced out or decided to get out. So I'd say it was about 12 years ago. But the first experience that I had 12 years ago, I had an experience that I can't explain, that blew my mind, that I couldn't wrap my head around, and it changed everything for me. And it sent me down this rabbit hole. Now, I would think that if you were a person who went to high school and went to college and got the job and put on a suit every day and had an experience like that, you'd probably want to forget about it as soon as possible. Or at least it might bother you for a while, but you know, you'd want to get back in the boat, you know?
Right.
I was never in the boat.
You were never in the boat. Okay.
So it sent me down this rabbit hole that I was to discover had no end. You know, it just opened up a world of a whole new world, you know, that we're living in, you know, a world of subterfuge, conspiracy, cover-ups. I mean, Jesus, you got to go, wait a second now. What the hell is going on with people? If this is in the same category, you know, as the Loch Ness Monster when I go to the library, right?
So was your experience with a being, with a craft, with an entity? Was it in your room, or were you outside? Just generically, if you don't want to be specific.
Yeah, and I won't. You know, I find that the experience itself is not as important as just having the experience, if that makes sense. It was 3:00 in the morning. I was in my house, this house that I'm in right now.
Okay.
I had insomnia, which wasn't not uncommon for me. I went through years of insomnia. I got a little older and it went away, thank God. But not uncommon for me to be up at 3:00 in the morning, laying on the couch, reading a book, and I had an experience that, you know, you go to bed as one person and you wake up as another overnight.
Wow.
You know? And I started looking for answers. I called psychics. I never even thought about psychics before. I went to the library. I was looking around for where does this fit, you know, right, in this world? And it brought back, you know, a memory that I have. And I talked about this on the last interview I did, but I'll mention it briefly. You know, my dad is a big fisherman.
Hey, Thomas, I hate to do this, man. I so hate to do this.
Yeah.
We have to take a break.
Oh.
Can we come back exactly to where you are right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Race, let's rock with a break here.
Hey, UFO conference enthusiasts. We've got another great event for you in 2024. The Saucers and Aliens Kansas UFO Day in Dimension G is being held in the UFO capital of Kansas, Geneseo, on July 6th. This is a fun festival in the middle of nowhere. There will be a parade, decorated yards, costumes, vendors, speakers, and a showing of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. Appropriately, an 8-foot-tall statue of Gort and a statue of Klaatu will be dedicated. This will be the only museum in the U.S. with these custom-made statues. If you'd like to donate to the statue project or attend the event, visit GeneseoMuseum.com. That's GENESEO Museum.com. Be sure to bring your camera when you attend the event. That's GeneseoMuseum.com.
Most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine. What happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Toutfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from UnX Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
And we're back. It's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Dan Harary, and Race, let's bring back Thomas Jane. Thomas, sorry, brother, we have to pay some bills around here.
Give me time to make a nice cup of tea.
There you go. So last we were speaking, you were in your home. It's 3 a.m. on a couch. You had an experience, and then
First of all, I want to see that Day the Earth Stood Still. It sounded like they were going to do a screening of that. That sounded great. So I'll be looking that up after we're done.
Which, the original or the remake?
Yeah, it looked like they were. Yeah, and they even had a big statue of Gort.
Oh, one of my best friends is Fred Barton. He's called the Robot Man. He builds Gort. And do you know Fred Barton?
It sounds familiar. I've known a couple of these guys that have.
He's the guy. He's the guy. He did the robot from Lost in Space, Gort, the Star Wars robots, Robbie from Forbidden Planet.
Fred Barton. That what a cool moniker that is, boy. Yeah. I make the robots for Hollywood. That's pretty badass.
His website is therobotman.com. He is awesome. Anyway, okay, so let's get back to your experience here.
Well, I remember one experience that I'd completely forgotten about until after this had happened was it happened to me when I was about 8, maybe 9. My dad and my granddad were big fishermen. Still are. In fact, I'm going to Montana with my old man to do some trout fishing here in the spring.
Wow, that's great.
But we're driving back from one of our excursions, where the old man would wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning, throw you in the car, go down to the river, spend the day. And it was nighttime. We were driving back. My grandpa's car had a sunroof.
Okay.
And I'm in the back. Grandpa's driving. Dad's in the driver's seat, and I look up through the sunroof and I see this glowing orangish yellow fireball circling in the sky above us, doing like figure eights.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that. I tried to get my dad's attention, and he just, both of them just sat there staring straight ahead, driving in the night, through out there in the country, driving home. And I remember talking to them and going, hey, look, are you guys seeing this? And them just being completely non-responsive. And that memory is so old that I can't tell if that was a dream or a real memory, but it's there and it doesn't feel like a dream. But it's very interesting when I started doing a little research about, when the non-responsiveness, they were like in a trance.
They were turned off.
Turned off, right? That's
you were turned on. It sounds like the UFO was giving you a private show, and your dad and your granddad were probably not supposed to be part of your experience.
That's fascinating, and whether or not that, I really don't think that anything else happened besides that. But they may have just been checking people out as they're sort of
trying not to hit deer or bears or antelopes on the thing. But no, that's a really good story, man. I love
upstate New York. Yeah,
that's a real good story. Okay, I got some more questions for you. I think this year you're going to be at your very first contact in the desert, right? You've not been there before, have you?
I've always wanted to go, and I've never been in town. I've always been working. So this time I've blocked it out, not going anywhere. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there the whole time. I want to check. There's a lot of people I want to check out. I want to see Avi Loeb. He's a really interesting new voice in this. You need
to talk to Whitley Strieber, Thomas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you should definitely talk to him about some of your experiences.
Yep.
Yeah.
Strieber's
so
great.
You're gonna do a lecture. I wrote this down. You're gonna do a lecture, a workshop.
I am going to do a 90-minute lecture. I'm going to take a lot of material from the book.
Right.
And my lecture is called "When Worlds Collide." I think that's a 1953 movie by George Powell.
Yeah, it is.
But I think because I call it that because I think what we're dealing with is the intersection of three different worlds. There's a world that we live in, you and I and everyone else, with all its complexity and history and it's human civilization, where we're now on the verge of this burgeoning AI complex that's the fruit of centuries of labor, right? That's us. And then there's the world which I listened to this guy named Dane Wigington, and he's all about geoengineering.
Okay.
Fascinating stuff. I don't know where I stand on it all, but I always tune into him. He's on Saturday afternoons on YouTube. You can find him. I think his thing is called geoengineering.com. And he calls them the controllers, right? The people who control the money, the people who control the world, who make these decisions. These people are in the middle of some sort of assault on Western civilization. So you got those guys. And then
would that be the Illuminati?
No.
No? Okay. Because they're not that bright, probably.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one black hand that's kind of guiding the whole thing. I think it's all Dick Cheney, quite frankly. I think Dick Cheney. Yeah. We'll kill that guy and maybe things will change. It's like George Carlin said. He goes, these people went to the same colleges. They join the same clubs. They got
skull and bones, right? They all do skull and bones.
And they don't need to call a meeting. They know what their best interests are. They don't have to talk about it. They don't need to call a meeting. They just do it. And those are the guys. They're bred. It's these families. I mean, you do the research, and all these families go back hundreds of years, and we're basically living under this aristocratic system that America broke off from and tried to create a new system without kings and queens and dukes and archbishops and all that crap. And we ended up basically with the same system, but they just kind of changed the names around.
I think
Because
you're
they're very powerful. They've been in control for a very long time. And now they've got some really sophisticated toys, and they want to stay in power. And they're thinking 10, 20 years ahead. And they're thinking, okay, this internet's coming on. People have access to incredible amounts of information now. They're kind of shooting themselves in the foot because a lot of people are turning to alternative media now to get in the news, to try to, talk to each other, to get the truth. I mean, I don't think trust in mainstream media has ever been so low.
Who's the third group?
The aliens.
Yeah, right. Them.
The visitors. The
Right.
visiting aliens. And these three worlds are kind of on this collision course right now. We're at a really interesting time in human history. I think there is a battle going on for control of the Western world. We've seen countries turn totalitarian, but they're individual countries. They're Eastern Europe. They were falling like dominoes for a while there. But this is the first time where we're kind of seeing an assault on the whole of the Western world. That makes it different. I think they've been trying to do that for quite a long time, but now we finally got the technology to actually be able to wrangle, a good third of the world, and probably the whole world, because you've got digital ID coming in, you've got, digital money coming in where they can turn on and off the spigot, in 15-minute cities. If you walk outside the city limits, your palm won't work anymore when you're trying to buy groceries.
There are Starbucks, Thomas, that don't take cash anymore. That amazes me.
I tried to put money in the bank. I've got a little farmhouse in France, and I went down there and I brought some cash with me, and I wanted to put it in my bank account in France.
Right.
So I walked in with a little zipper, that little bank bag with the big zipper.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah, I love those. I put it down and I said, "Here's my account number. I'd like to deposit this." And they looked at me and they said, "No, you can't put that in the bank."
Really? They said you couldn't put cash in the bank.
Could not put my cash in the bank. And I tried, my French is terrible, but I tried to get, answers. And the closest I could get was if they don't know where the money's coming from, they can't deposit it.
You're one of the great, mafioso money launderers of our time.
Right.
After all, drug cartel. Thomas Jane, the drug cartel
Yeah.
lord from Mexico.
Here's my take for the week. I want you to throw it in the bank.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Wow.
It's starting to happen everywhere.
Let's talk about your book. What inspired your book? What do you hope to accomplish? And again, it's called a Human's Guide to Visiting Aliens. And a lot of people are going to want to talk to you about it at Contact and read it. So what inspired it, and what's your premise for the book?
Read a lot of books, great books. A lot about there's wonderful books on the history of UFOs. There's wonderful books on disclosure, on the military's interaction with these craft over the past 80 years. You've got books about UFOs and water. Great book by Wendt, I think it is.
UFOs. There's a new documentary called Transmedium USOs and Fast Movers.
And Dolan is just finishing up his book on USOs. So I think that's really cool. Not a lot of books on sort of what does it mean? Okay, so aliens, they're here, they exist, obviously from somewhere. We don't know, but probably from other planets, probably. And they've probably been around a lot longer than we have, or they've developed at a rate that's much faster than we have. They've probably been around a lot longer. They've got technology that we don't understand. They look humanoid, okay? So the first thing, when you talk to somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson or anybody from the straight science world, they're going to go, and they've said this for years. If you rewound the tape on Earth and you played evolution all over again, nothing like a humanoid sort of bipedal hairless ape should ever appear again because all the flukes and accidents and all of the machinations over time, which you know, the asteroid comes and wipes out all of life on Earth, or
all the dinosaurs
freezes and turns into an ice ball. Like none of that would happen, and some new series of events would happen. And then if we did develop some sort of intelligence, which isn't obvious, but if we did, it wouldn't look anything like us. And yet we have 99.9% of the contact cases describe humanoid aliens. So that's amazing. So I started doing research into why is that? How could that be? The other thing, you know, is consciousness. Okay, they're obviously conscious, and so are we. So, but we don't have anything else to compare ourselves to, or at least we haven't until now. And in the straight world, we still don't, because they're still denying that anything like this could possibly exist. You know, so there's, you know, the faster than light, the technology, how do they get there? All that's fascinating. And I get into that, but I really fascinated with how do intelligent societies evolve and what are the similarities? Because there seem to be an awful lot of similarities. And if that's true, and these humanoid, intelligent, conscious societies are cropping up on planets all over, and who knows how many, but it could be quite a few. I suspect that it is. Then we're living in a very different world than the textbooks tell us we do, and the possibilities are enormous. And so that's why I wrote the book. And I also wanted to explore the idea of purpose. You know, everybody on planet Earth, we're individuals. We've got a private mind. We have private dreams. We go to bed, have our little dreams, and, you know, maybe that'll change soon, but nobody else, you know, you're the only one that experiences those dreams or those thoughts during the day. You've got basic needs, you know, sex, food, shelter, in that order. And you've got desire, you know, desire for something called fulfillment or happiness, this elusive happiness thing. And we're social creatures, you know, we have a desire to contribute something to society, or at least have a society of friends and family. That society is changing in ways that because of the internet, you know, it used to be your friends that you could call on the phone, the town that you were from. Now that's becoming a whole other ball of wax with the social media and stuff like that. But what are we doing here? What's our purpose? And I wonder, and I explore this in the book, that these other civilizations that have survived probably a hell of a lot longer than we have, and we might not make it. It's not obvious that we're going to get through the next year right now. Yeah. Right. The way things are going right now.
It's pretty scary. Yeah, it's pretty scary right now. Yeah.
Very scary. And maybe, you know, hopefully this is just another kind of bottleneck like we experienced during World War II and after. Hopefully we'll come out the other end of this, but it's not obvious that we will. And I wonder if the difference doesn't have something to do with a communal purpose, you know, something to aim at that's bigger than us, that goes on long after we die. You know, we have on planet Earth a lot of trouble planning for the future. You know, we can, you know, set up an IRA and, you know, think about one day we'll be old and we'll have to retire. We can think about stuff like that, but as a society, you know, remember that tsunami that happened in Japan?
Sure.
2011, maybe. So another one happened 100 years, maybe 200 years, but I can't remember the date before that. A massive tsunami wiped out Japan, right? A lot of Japan. So the people in Japan said, you know what, let's build these giant pillars, 10-foot tall, massive pillars, and we're going to place them on the shoreline all around the island. And we're going to write in stone, we're going to carve into the stone, do not build below this point. Okay. Because that's the point where everybody got wiped out, right? And that lasted, a couple of generations, and then those people died, and then nobody was alive in Japan that remembered that tsunami. And people were looking at those pillars, and the real estate guys were going, God, Jesus, we could make a killing. And so they started to build.
Wow, I never heard this.
Below that pillar, right?
And I never heard any of this. And
they built up, and cities formed, and towns, and giant communities. And then 2011 happened and wiped everybody out again. We don't have the capability, it seems, to think long-term, long-term goals. Yeah. And I think we're going to need them if we're going to survive and think about survival of the species. It's not just, do you think we can make it through this budding world war that's at our doorstep right now? It's what after that, and after that, and Ray Kurzweil, he certainly thinks about what's possible in the technology field, but we don't have a purpose. I could say that we don't.
Sounds like your book is something of a philosophical piece, a blueprint, or a roadmap, or a guide for like where we should be going.
Yeah, that's part of it for sure. But the stuff that I'm most interested in that really, kept me coming back to the computer was stuff like telepathy. How the hell does that work? Like, there's so many accounts of telepathy. I mean, it's pretty much ubiquitous throughout alien encounters. And is that technological telepathy? Is it innate? It seems to be innate. So I explore some of the research on psi phenomena, which includes telepathy and all that fun consciousness work that we seem to be just at the very beginning of. It's still another field that's completely unaccepted in mainstream science, but it's backed up by a lot of data, a lot of great data in that world. But if it's true, then that means that this consciousness thing that we possess, right, and that apparently these aliens possess, is bigger than a natural evolutionary sort of fluke that happened to arise, from ape-like creatures that banded together and started hunting, and then they used symbols to communicate, and it's we sort of bootstrapped this consciousness that we now possess.
How do you feel about Eric von Daniken's theory that they helped to craft mankind? There were this Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthal man, and then Thomas, do you ever hear of the Great Brain event? 50,000 years ago, there was the Great Brain event. The University of Chicago did a study, and they said 50,000 years ago, human beings' brains were like little walnuts, and then overnight they became our brains.
That was 50,000 years ago. We developed symbolism, and that really it's been like art, art, symbolism, and that really changed our brains.
Well, that's when according to Eric von Daniken and those people, and I absolutely believe this, that our caveman ancestors with sticks and twigs suddenly became us, and we're becoming geniuses looking at the stars and doing astronomy and helping the aliens build the pyramids. So we changed very, very quickly, over a period of overnight. 3 million years. Our brains basically doubled in size, and it took about 3 million years for that to happen. But it's unheard of in evolutionary biology that would happen. And then you're right. Past 50,000 years, we took another great leap forward. And whether or not this is a result of sort of symbolic language that we developed, and then that created, because we know now that if I learn a new skill, like if I
sit myself down and learn how to play the piano and work at it, new neurons are going to be forming inside my head, like
muscles, when you lift weights.
Yeah, and which is true for our brain. So is it that, or is it a gene that was sort of spliced and put together in a different way? There's evidence for that. There's a really interesting thing with the monkeys and the apes and the chromosomes. We have what do we have? One less chromosome than the monkeys. The monkeys, the chimps, two of them melded together in a very unusual way that we don't see anywhere in nature. And the way chromosomes usually merge together, they merge together like that, but this one merged together like that, which is very odd. So I get into all that. So it's endless. What's fun about this is that it really changes the game. It changes everything.
Do you think
everything, how we view ourselves, reality, nature? What about abiogenesis? Life, right? So if these guys have been around way longer than we have, and they probably have, that means that while our planet was busy making single-celled organisms,
okay,
other societies on other planets were out there, building the internet. So what does that tell us about the origin of life? How I guess it's obviously not such a fluke, right? Right now, believe it or not, a lot of people still are going for this lightning bolt in a warm puddle theory of how life started. But obviously there's something more to it if it's, pretty damn common in our universe.
My daughter's writing in here. The brain increasing concept could be similar to what happened to Stephen Hawking. His body gave out because his brain literally needed more room. She's watching that movie about Stephen Hawking.
Great movie. And what a genius. And yeah, for Hawking, obviously a lot of scientists were saying the same sort of stuff for Hawking, to say, hey, if UFOs are real, why do they only appear to freaks and weirdos? It's very telling, of sort of how we're trained to view this kind of stuff. And it's criminal because the opportunity, the doors that will open to us, should we walk through this door and go, okay, we're obviously not the pinnacle of God's creation. There's a lot more of us and a lot more going on. It changes everything. It changes our ideas about biology, about consciousness, about science, about ourselves. And I find that endlessly fascinating.
So do I. Do you think we'll live to see disclosure, Thomas?
It's a damn good question, isn't it? I think that those people are going to hang on as long as they possibly can. They're going to hang on by their fingernails. They are going to obfuscate. They're going to backpedal. They're going to make up it's going to be a tough, But there's also sort of a tipping point when enough people have had anomalous experiences, and this becomes sort of common knowledge, so we're really headed in, this is the two worlds that are colliding as we speak. I think it's going to be a grassroots movement that ultimately forces the hand. One question is, why doesn't another country why doesn't France come out?
Yeah, that's such a great question.
Right?
It really is. Yeah. Like, why does it have to be the U.S. president? Why does it have to be us?
Why doesn't China get ahead of it and just go, hey, guess what? And we've got the craft to prove it.
Avi Loeb has a theory, Thomas.
Yeah.
He thinks, well, the standard theories are, the U.S. can't tell the world the aliens exist because we'll be panicking in the streets like Orson Welles, 1938. Okay, maybe. That was a long time ago, Orson Welles. Okay, that was 100 years ago. I don't think there's panicking in the streets. Then they have advanced technology that would do away with oil, coal, gas, nuclear batteries, every kind of thing. And it would change the global political and financial universe. Well, then all the oil billionaires in Texas and Saudi Arabia and Russia, they'll all freak out and they'll be pissed, right? And then another thing, but wait, another theory, which Avi Loeb says, is that they, the aliens, have said to the powers that be, we, the aliens, are not ready to be revealed yet. And I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense, right? That would explain it.
Yeah, the thing with technology is you can kind of wrap your mind around how something works, but that doesn't mean you can build it.
Right.
And these craft take energy that it's unheard of. Kevin Newth did a talk for the Soul Foundation, and the tic tac that went from 28,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds.
Yeah.
He said that move would take more power than the United States total nuclear output in a year.
Wow.
That move takes more power than we can put together nuclear in a year.
Wow.
He's big on the math. He did the math.
Yeah, I know who that is.
That I'm not. I think that creating that amount of energy is impossible for us, even if we knew how to do it. We would have to be gifted, and we may have been. Charles Hall I love the tall white story, the Charles Hall. He lived on Nellis Air Force Base, and he got to know these aliens called the tall whites.
Right. I know. Yeah.
Apparently they gifted the military, one of their little scout craft or something. That might happen. But building one, I don't think we have the capability. We're also going to need to engineer on the atomic level. We're getting down so we can engineer on the molecular level. These cell phones are proof of that. I mean, the storage in these things is because we know how to engineer on the molecular level, and we are actually encouraging electrons to bounce in and out of these traps, these gates that store information. We can do that. But the atomic level is a completely different story. We can't do that yet. We don't know how to build on the atomic level. So we might understand some of the theories. Who knows? We might not. They've been studying these damn things for 50, 80 years. We might not. And I don't think that we're going to be, gifted. I think the gift of technology is a terrible idea.
I think AI is really scary. I think AI. Listen, if Russia or China hack our AI, right? Oh, Trump won by 50 million votes. Well, right. How are we gonna know that did or did not happen if AI is telling us that happened?
AI is in the control of the people. The people
it's
who
scary. That's very scary
for quite a long time.
Last question. We have about a minute left. What do you think if the visitors, have you heard the theory that they're us from the future? I love that one.
I have. Yeah.
I love that. What do you think about that? Wouldn't that make a lot of sense?
Well, the problem is trying to wrap your mind around how that could actually happen. And so far, we've just have but it's par for the course. We really don't know what's going on with physics. And any good physicist will be the first one to admit that. So it's possible. I think that, and part of my talk at Contact in the Desert is going to be about this. I think that are they here studying us? Are they here to enlighten us,
hurt us, eat us? Kill us, eat us. Do you remember the Twilight Zone, To Serve Man? Remember that one? Don't get it on. It's a cookbook. Yeah. That's the greatest episode ever.
I think the answer might be all of the above.
I think so too. We got to wrap it up. Thank you, Thomas. This was awesome. Man, we could do another hour easily. Please come to Contact in the Desert to see Thomas talk about his new book. Thomas, how can people contact you if they want to get to you?
If they want to get to me, geez.
Instagram?
I don't really I don't look at that stuff. I really don't. I think that's.
I think they should come to Contact in the Desert and meet you in person.
Meet you there, yeah. I think social media is is the hand of the devil reaching inside of us.
I do too. I hate it with all my heart, man. I really do.
But I do posts and stuff, and I try to get the word out with things I believe in, and And anybody could find my email online if they want to reach out. It's not that tough. People have done it before.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for doing this. And thank you for being a member of our Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.org. Check that out. People join if you want to join. We'll see you with Contact in the Desert, Thomas. And I'm about 50 pages into your book, and I'm like, man, this guy has a lot to say, you know. So
yeah,
we'll be in.
That's why I've got a good editor.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and who gave you the editor? I did. Oh, that's right, I did. Thomas, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being in the HDA, and I'll see you at Contact in the Desert.
Thanks.
And everybody out there, next week, my guest is Ella LeBain. She's a biblical scholar, easy for me to say. She's been studying the Bible for 40 years, and she can tell you God, aliens, ETs, angels, how that's all interrelated. Thank you for watching Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. We'll see you next Thursday night right here on the OnX Network. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Dan Harary, author of the sci-fi novel After They Came. After They Came tells the story of Jonathan Tuckerman, a Los Angeles man down on his luck and truly alone in life, who decides to mark his 70th birthday by drowning himself in the Pacific Ocean. Instead, he inadvertently becomes the world's Wonder Man after a pair of extraterrestrial visitors from the Pleiades appear in a giant spacecraft, pluck him from the sea, and present him to the media and the world as their ambassador to mankind. Many leading UFO researchers have embraced After They Came. Nick Pope has called the novel, quote, a delightful tale of wonder and hope. Richard Dolan adds, quote, this book is a captivating novel of benevolent alien contact. And famous alien abductee Travis Walton has said, quote, After They Came is presented in such a graphic visual style, it could serve as the basis for an entertaining film adaptation. After They Came is now available on paperback right here at Genius Book Publishing. By the way, my book After They Came is now also available as an audiobook. It just was released as an audiobook. After They Came, print, ebook, audiobook, all available on Amazon.com. Thank you.